Hi everybody, it's Mark again with ExoticCar PlayPlace, and I know I've had a lot of requests to learn a little bit more about my E60 M5 that I have here standing beside me, or behind me in actuality. Now, the Lamborghini, I've been doing a lot on that, and I will be doing a lot more. As a matter of fact, follow along for my new Lamborghini videos, because not only am I going to be talking about things like reviews and whatnot, but actually my Lamborghini, I'm going to start a bit of a project Lamborghini Gallardo, and some of that is going to be simple stuff like graphics and stuff, but a lot of things I am going to be doing are a little bit more invasive. And as a matter of fact, I've already got some parts on order, so please don't hesitate in subscribing, because you will find some interesting videos to come here very shortly on the Lamborghini. Now, that being said, today we're going to talk about the E60 M5, and you'll probably notice I had a video previous that did very, very well because it was very popular. A lot of people liked it and found a lot of value in it, and it was the 5 things that you need to know about the E60 M5. Well, this is part 2 to that. We're going to talk about 5 other things you may or may not have known about the E60 M5, and I'm going to talk about those today. So let's get started over here. Okay, so the first thing what we're going to do, one of the things that I want to point out, so we're talking about the 5 things that you probably didn't know, or maybe you did or maybe you didn't, but here I'm going to show you examples of 5 new things that I didn't include in that last video. So the first thing we're going to talk about here on this list of the things, the top 5 things that you probably didn't know about the M5, and that is a cold start on these E60 M5s. Cold start, if you've seen other videos, Top Gear Tiffany Dell actually did a review on this, and he commented it sounds like a diesel truck when it starts on cold startup. And it kind of, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but they do actually sound a little rough. So here, take a note. This car has not been started yet for the day, so we're going to start it. Let's see how this thing sounds. Now you'll notice it's pretty rough. It's kind of loud. It's a little rough and there's a little shake to it. Well, that's normal. Every E60 M5 owner has reported similar noises coming from the car on a cold start. It gets worse, of course, when it's really cold, but it all has to do with the vanos and all that, the way this car is tuned in to keep maximum efficiency in terms of emissions, as well as to keep the car running. Of course, it's a highly tuned engine, and the vanos and everything have to dial in to keep everything on the straight and narrow to run properly. So anyway, that is a perfectly normal sound, but it's one of those things that everybody should know about if you're getting into this. So the second thing that you probably don't know about the E60 M5, and if you do, that's super. Here's another one for you. It is the engine RPMs. Now, when you start the car cold, as I just did here 2 minutes ago, the engine RPM starts, and if you look, the red line is way down. The red line is around 6,500 RPM, actually probably a little bit lower when you first started it. I didn't show that initially, but the tachometer adjusts the red line and the yellow zone for the engine speed at a very low value, because when a car is cold, you don't want to beat the crap out of it, and you do want to limit the engine RPM, especially when a car is cold and freshly started. So what you'll notice as you're driving the car, what ends up happening is that whole tachometer basically starts to rotate to the point where the red zone eventually, after about 10-15 minutes of driving, eventually evolves to the point where it's up at that 8,300 RPM red line. Right now we're nowhere near that. Right now we're at about 6,700 RPM or 6,800 RPM as a red line. But as time goes on and the car warms up, that tachometer slides. It's a sliding tach, and basically you wind up with your engine RPM at a red line of about 8,300 RPM. Again, strictly there to control the or to limit the potential damage that you might impose on the engine, because obviously a cold engine doesn't like to be run hard. You know what, there's probably tons of videos out there where you see people revving the crap out of their car on a cold start just to show off how the exhaust sounds. Oh, that's hard, that's tough on an engine. Don't do it. That's gonna wreck stuff. So the third thing that you need to know that you may or may not know about these E60 M5s is the hardcore oil consumption. They use a lot of oil. And again, if you're looking for a Honda Accord, this is maybe not the place for you. If you want a car that goes like a Lamborghini Gallardo or something even better potentially, this may be a good place to start if you want a sedan that has that level of performance. But of course, with that level of performance, unfortunately comes other issues. And with some of these cars, and Lambos consume oil too, Porsches often consume oil. Almost every vehicle does consume some oil, but typically the higher the performance engine, you'll find often specifications for oil consumption tend to be higher and higher for a higher performance motor. And the E60 M5 truly is one of those vehicles. It does not have a shortage of oil consumption. As a matter of fact, you can almost expect to use a quart of oil, say about 1,600 kilometers or about 1,000 miles, sorry. So you can use a quart in about between 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers. And that, you know, realistically sounds like a lot, but based on BMW's recommendations from the book and the manufacturer's instructions, they say that that's not excessive. That's kind of the rule of thumb. And of course, you know, ultimately the style of drive that you impose or the way you're using this car really going to lead to the amount of oil consumption you're going to experience. Of course, if you spend the majority of your time in the upper third rev range, you're going to consume oil. That goes without saying. Obviously, as the engine spins harder and faster under much heavier load, everything has to work that much harder, things get hotter, and of course, naturally, you would expect oil consumption to go up, and it does. So if you drive the car relatively mildly, you can expect a little bit higher on that range, but do expect oil consumption of, you know, a significant amount on these cars, just as you expect high fuel consumption, which I noted in my one of my previous videos. So here we are driving the SMG Transmission E60 M5, and of course this is the fourth thing that I'm going to talk about. I mean, everybody's heard of the SMG Transmission, and it's nothing new with, you know, some of the goods and bads that you hear about an E60 M5. But I'm going to share with you a little bit about more specifics on the E60 SMG Transmission. The SMG, of course, has had a bad rap right from the get-go. It's always been known as a little bit clunky, a little bit sluggish, and a little bit sloppy. And that's something that's just been a reputation with this car as well as the M3s. So that's all very easily configured manually or in the M5. Like there's a lot of stuff you can configure in this car through either the iDrive or of course through the controls down below here. And when I toggle this button, that changes the speed. That will alter the shift speed of the transmission. Just like up here on the dash, when I put this in gear, you can see the transmission settings here. See, it's on slowest, medium, default, next up, and maximum attack for transmission speed. This is where you want to drive it. So for everybody out there who, you know, I know there's a lot of people that complain about the speed of the shifting being kind of slow and sloppy. This is where you want to set it, the maximum attack mode, because that ultimately makes it the most enjoyable to drive. You have less of that lurchiness going on, and that really is where the car becomes more enjoyable to drive, is at that top speed. So the last, but certainly not the least, is the performance of this E60 M5. And what is a performance like? Well, here's some biblical stats for you. 0 to 60 miles per hour, of course, 4.2 seconds. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour is 4.4. 0 to quarter mile is about 12.5 seconds at almost 120 miles per hour. How is that all done? Well, that's done through the 500 horsepower settings of the E60 M5 here. And if you go into the screen, into the iDrive settings, you can toggle that. So right now I'm in the 400 horsepower setting, and you'll notice here I've got this is the M Drive settings. I've got Sport 5, M Dynamic mode, the P500, which gives me the full 500 horse, because default is actually 400 horsepower, and the backrest is in Sport. So of course with that, what you have is the bolsters are grabbing you through the corners, which is a pretty fun little experiment here. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna experiment and we're gonna do a quick 0 to 60 run. Now what I'm not going to do is abuse the car. You know, I'm trying to make it last, obviously. I don't want to beat it too hard. What I am going to do is do a rolling start, and we'll do a rough 0 to 60, which is 100 kilometers an hour. We're gonna try that. So we're gonna do a true test, a 0 to 60 test with this car, or 0 to 100 kilometers per hour test we're gonna do, and we're gonna do it in the M mode right here. I'm gonna activate that, and that's going to give me the full 500 horsepower. And we will do a test run and see roughly what kind of performance numbers we can actually get. Oh, and there it is. So we hit 100 kilometers an hour like that. This thing is so fast. Anyway, I hope you like that little piece of acceleration there. So that's the 5. If I could summarize 5 more things that you guys ought to know about the E60 M5, and a lot of people have been asking about some of these extras. What else do you know about the E60? What is it like really to own these cars? And so that was 5 more things that I thought I'd share with you guys on what it is truly like to own and operate a BMW E60 M5. So please, again, don't forget to share, like, subscribe. Again, subscribe would be awesome. I really am looking for a great following of folks, group of people that share the same common interest, and that is high performance cars. And in this case, we're in the E60 M5. Tomorrow we could be in the Lamborghini. The next day I could be reviewing a new 911. You don't know what's next. And for those reasons, you probably want to come around, check out my next video, but more often, or more importantly, subscribe to my channel, because that's going to let you know when that next great video does pop up. Join the ExoticCar PlayPlace crew and come back. Many more great videos to follow, and I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.